Welcome to Force Transmission Part 4. In this part, our topic will be weight shifting and why weight shifting is so complicated and still so important. So I talked in the part 1, 2 and 3 about structure, about extending the surface, and weight shifting in the end is also nothing else than structure and extending the surface. So when we talked about 1, 2 and 3, to extend the surface by incoming pressure towards your wrist, elbow, shoulder, griddle, abdominal area, chest bone and lower back. And in part 3 about your hip flexors and your pelvis, now we try to extend that surface towards your feet. And your feet are in the end nothing else than your force thrusters. When we talk about the extension of the surface, we literally mean we want to decouple, and by decoupling we want to create tension. So when I do this in my shoulder or in my shoulder blade or shoulder griddle, I extend so far that I can create tension over muscle, tendons and bone structure. When you create tension, you have like a pull or a drag in two directions. So in the arm area, it's pretty easy. It gets more complicated when it goes to chest and lower back. Pelvis area, or let's say hip flexor area, very difficult, and even more difficult when you go from the hip flexors towards your knees. So the problem here is now that when we try to withstand force with the extension of the surface, we mostly move forward, what we also did in part 3. And if you do that, it's nothing wrong with that. It's actually pretty good if you already reached a level where you can control your lower back and your hip flexors to respond to force. But the next step is to not respond to force by open up the vector. The next step is to respond to force by thinning the vector or to make it smaller. So for example, in part 3 we had this example that pressure is coming, and in my response I am stepping my foot forward so that I'm extending my leg. So the problem here is that when you extend your leg, or let's say you straighten up your hip flexors towards the front, you need too much time to shift your weight from your rear to your front leg, for example. But what if I'm faster than him? Then I have him. Why? Because he takes too long time to shift his weight from his rear leg to the front leg. The moment I issue force against this pole, I lose weight in my front foot. That's a good thing. The problem is that the moment I push myself out, I cannot push myself in again. And therefore we need to condition ourselves to be able to do that. And when we use our hip flexors to do that, we first get our leg up and then we move forward. It's like a crocodile mouth. At first it looks quite strange when I issue force and I lose my weight here. But this is literally happens all the time when you punch someone or you are in a counterattack. What we try to achieve is that our process of moving down is not intercepted. That means I get pushed and my leg, my feet loses weight, the process of moving down should not stop. And this is why when we cannot open up the vector, we have to make it smaller. Because when I try to open up the vector, in the moment when I lose that, when I lose my weight on my front leg, I need, as I said, too much time to go to the front, or to go in the attacking position again. So what I do is, like, I try to have the fastest response as possible. That means the moment pressure is coming, my feet is still lifting a little bit up, but not in this sense. It's more like it's slowly losing weight. But what I do in that is the moment when the process of losing weight starts, I try to regain the weight on it. And this I can only achieve if I create space. And creating space, it's something like, you have to imagine somebody cuts off your calf. And this space you still have to move your hip flexors and your pelvis downwards. So if you move downwards, your opponent has a quite difficult time to withstand that pressure. Why? Because your answer is not anymore towards him, it's simply downwards. So if the answer is downwards, so he has like no option then to readjust, or first to accept that force coming in, and that results into somebody is pushing away. What you will see in these examples, and what you will see in most of the videos we do, we try to push with very linear force, even with sometimes with more force, but mostly it's always linear. So that means the effect is always that if you can overcome that force, that the other one is pushing himself out. Genau, gut, gib mir, bin ich raus. Ah, gut. Ja? Gib mir, geh nicht raus. So. Gib mir, ich komme hier gegen, komm, genau, bin ich raus. So. So, but this is not the goal, and this should not be seen as a goal. If I punch someone, or if I want to issue force, I don't want to push him away. I don't want him to fly away. What I want is that he drops into, or he drops with his weight into my structure, so that I can enter his body as deep as possible, or let's say as penetrate as deep as possible. So, and in this position, I can easily change hands, change directions, and still keep the control over him. Thank you for your attention. This was part 4 of Force Transmission. In the next part, I will talk a little bit more about why the effect is irrelevant and why the process is much more important. Thank you.